You're listening to Out of the Box with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetees.com. If you like us, please visit outoftheboxpodcast.com and click on the support button. We now have affiliates there, and if you use some of our affiliates, we get a little kickback. I'm here today with rapper Open Mike Eagle. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
That's great to hear. It's fantastic.
So you have your new album out.
I do. It's called Dark Comedy, and it came out June 10th. So trying to let everybody know about the rap album. Yeah.
Well, we'd love to support you and promote it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
How did you get into the rap game?
I've been rapping since I was in high school. I read this book by this guy named William Upsky Wimsett, who was a Chicago kind of hip hop graffiti legend, and it was called Bomb the Suburbs, and it was about how the people who called themselves hip hop you had to participate in the four elements, basically, which was which was MCing, DJing, breakdancing, and graffiti. And I got so inspired when I read the book that I tried to do them all.
Do you do breakdancing?
I do. Actually, I'm on the board for a nonprofit organization now here that teaches breakdancing and rap to the youth of LA.
I got to give it up to you because I have tried breakdancing and taken many breakdancing classes, and I don't think I have the muscular body strength for it.
It definitely has to develop over time. There's a lot of really particular muscles that have to be developed to hold some of those poses and do some of those activities.
I think pop and lock is more for my body type. I tried it. A lot of people would say, well, Rosie, why would you be into breakdancing? But I don't know if it was just the 80s and 90s and I kind of glamorized it, but I always wanted to do it. And I guess for stage actors, it's really good for your movement.
Right.
And so I took several classes and tried to study it, and I can barely do a push-up. So
but like I said, it all develops over time. I think everybody starts off, kind of it being very difficult because, like, even push-ups, they don't really help. They wouldn't help completely with the muscles that are involved in breaking. It's a lot of really particular under the shoulder muscles and back things that you end up kind of developing over time. You should come to Juice one day. They do it every Saturday in MacArthur Park, and there's
I'm scared.
Ages. You can just come see, and if you get inspired, you can do some stuff. But there's doctors and stuff that go there. They just kind of breakdance as a hobby, you know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
That is cool. So what were the other four? Breakdancing, graffiti?
Breakdancing, graffiti.
Now, the graffiti as an art, obviously, because explain to me. But I love graffiti art. I think it's absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, I have a lot of kids in my neighborhood. I don't live in the best neighborhood. A lot of, I'll see 10, 13-year-old kids just tagging, and I'm not wild about the tagging. I wouldn't mind, actually, if they covered the building of my front wall with amazing, beautiful graffiti art. Right. I would applaud that because at least it's artistic. But when it's just a couple initials, I'm like, no.
Well, yeah, it's definitely graffiti as the art form. But, part of it started, I won't say it started, but at its peak, graffiti was these big, beautiful pieces. And there's still a lot of people who do that. And the graffiti that we teach at Juice is still, on paper, it's still, the beautiful pieces with the wild style and the lettering and the colors and all that.
So what is Juice?
Juice is justice through uniting in creative energy. And that's a nonprofit organization, like I said, that teaches these hip hop elements to the youth of today, basically, in LA.
I like that because I think that was originally the intent of hip-hop was as a social justice, creative environment, atmosphere. And I don't know if you're into any African rappers, but some of the African rap now with the social justice underlying themes are just absolutely amazing.
I've heard some of them. I actually went and I did a program in Uganda with some rappers. And it kind of disappointed me. I didn't see a lot of that. I thought I would see a lot of that. And there was a little of that, but most of what I saw was people trying to copy American rap, copy the worst kind of
like the hoes and
God. And it's one thing to see it over here, but I was in Africa, it was heartbreaking. You know what I mean? That nobody was there to tell the young people, they're like, no, this is all really negative and harmful. You know what I mean?
I've seen both. I have seen that, and I've seen. I actually had an exchange student staying with me, who was from Europe, and he was exposing me to some of the African rap, and some of it was really degrading and demeaning, and like you said, the worst type of rap, and then some of it was social justice rap, and I think it's kind of like it is over here. A lot of it might be more underground, but I've heard some pretty amazing. I mean,
I was over there kind of in their underground, you know. And there was
you gotta get with it.
It was like there was a few heads that were like, okay, I'm trying to do something positive, but the vast majority of the rappers that we came in contact with were just literally copying like American rap stereotypes, like down to a T.
I gotta find some names for you, because I do remember hearing some amazing stuff, and I don't have names off the top of my head.
For sure, I'm not. I know they are out there for sure, and I know, like, I think the thing that happens in Africa is a lot of the positive rappers get exported. Actually, you know what I mean. So I think the ones that we end up hearing about over here are the ones that are more positive. But when I was there, I was like, oh,
you're like, no,
that's not really representative of what's actually going on here. You know what I mean?
Like, I don't like this.
Yeah, no.
So as a rapper, when you hear that type of rap, what goes through your head? Are you just totally like you want to go and yell at these guys and say no, or?
Well, when I was in Africa, I definitely did, because that being, you know, the ultimate place where my ancestors come from, there was just so much I wanted them to understand about the reason that American culture kind of ends up developing those sorts of attitudes is because of all of this trauma that's happened in our cultural history. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like, I really like, and for me to be there, you know, where those things hadn't happened, and to see them just portraying these stereotypes, it was really heartbreaking. So when I was over there, I wanted to just grab people and be like, stop
it now.
You know? But here, I understand why that happens. I understand a lot of people enjoy it, and I think that's cool. I just, my thing is always wanting there to be an understanding of the black cultural experience as something that's on a spectrum. You know what I mean? Not just like one image. And I get worried or concerned with hip hop as a culture being defined by the worst images that we produce. You know what I mean? So I'm never wanting to necessarily shake anybody out of doing what they're doing, but as like for consumers, mm-hmm. for people outside of the culture, for listeners, I want listeners to understand that that's not all there is.
Do you think, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but do you think that some of these African American youths and black youths from poor neighborhoods are being exploited? Because, you know, some of these rap CDs, you know, I mean, a lot of times they're MP3s now, but the CDs, you'll look at the writers of the songs or the producers of the songs, and they're all, you know, white producers and people that are in the white executives in the, you know, music industry who are kind of, I don't want to say guiding them, but yeah, some of the, you know, like you said, the worst rap, you look at who's producing it, the actual producers of it.
The other side of that game is that most of the actual consumers are white too. Mm-hmm. So like, you know
true.
what I mean? So
it's
not necessarily the blacks are getting exploited. I mean, the black image gets exploited a little bit, but like, that's not the market. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're necessarily pitching that stereotype back into the community, even though that is reflexively kind of what happens through just like, you know, TV and radio. But it's all aimed at the young white consumer, and it has been for a long time now. So I don't tend to look at it as a nefarious thing. I look at it as a capitalistic thing, you know, and I think that kind of drives a lot of what we hear. Mm-hmm.
So I did check out your album. Thank you for sending it to me.
Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
And what inspires your raps?
I get a lot of inspiration from movies. I get a lot of inspiration from books. I get a lot of inspiration just from the things that happen to me from day to day. Like, I like to incorporate my own unique experiences into music. To me, like, rap as a form is kind of I won't say underdeveloped, because there's a lot of people who do a lot of different types of stuff with it, but I think the expectations of it from people are very low in terms of like what sorts of things get communicated, and so it's always very imperative to me to make it as unique as possible, only in terms of my own voice and my own creativity. Like, I never want to do what other people are doing. I want to do what I'm doing, and try to find the way to make the best songs out of things that are important to me, rather than trying to like go down the list of like, okay, you make the song about a girl, you make the song about the club, you know what I mean? Like, I try to find inspiration to make the best possible songs I can, just kind of out of my own life, you know, because I feel like the kind of movies I like, the kind of books I like, those auteurs, those authors, those directors are doing the same thing. Like, they're finding ways to make their life, however mundane it might be, like they're finding ways to turn that into a piece of art that's touching. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I attempt to do as well.
Okay, so you said that you read this book and, you know, it inspired you to become a rapper. But, you know, I grew up with a lot of kids. I grew up in a very musical city in New Orleans, and I know a lot of kids who were musicians and, you know, rappers and other things. And, you know, now they're accountants or lawyers or other things. When in your childhood did you say, hey, this is something that I can really do as a lifelong thing? Well, because it's kind of the road less traveled.
I mean, I did it a little differently because I went to school first.
Were you rapping in college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was rapping as a hobby in college.
Okay.
So I went to school, I graduated, you know, I worked in my field. I got a psychology degree. So I was working in schools. I was working with nonprofits that work in schools. I taught for a little while. And
I'm sorry, I just have this image of a rapping psychologist in my mind. I know that that's not realistic, but I just have this image of you sitting there with a patient and rapping to them solutions.
You know, it's funny. At one point, I was trying to, when I graduated and I finished undergrad, I was attempting to look into going into music therapy, and I wanted to do something slightly like that. But what I didn't know is that music therapy programs, they want you to have been a musician. Like, they want you to know theory or know how to play something. You know what I mean? So I didn't necessarily qualify, but I did have something like that in mind. Maybe not to that specific of a degree, but I did have something like that in mind
to help like heal kids or heal people through music.
Yeah, just as a way to as a mental health resource, to use rap as like a mental health resource. I think
it is a mental health resource because a lot of people, you know, music is used quite a bit in the religious and spiritual aspects because it brings up emotion.
Right.
It brings up emotion, and in that way, a lot of people can feel more connected to God or more connected to a consciousness or maybe a group, you know, mentality of feeling like you're connected to something else greater than yourself.
Right.
So I think in that way, music can be very, very profound.
Absolutely. I think, you know, when I have shows, I mean, we when things are all hitting, we kind of all have a moment together, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of all, you know, something kind of happens in the room, you know what I mean? I don't know what it is. I think it's just uniting people on a certain frequency, a certain rhythm, even if it's just like even if it's just psychological. I think it does produce some sort of synergy, you know.
Or even as, you know, you're a performer, and I'm a performer too, but even as an audience, when you're an audience, if you're at a concert that you really enjoy and everyone's kind of singing the lyrics together, there's this feeling of oneness or a feeling of connectedness.
Right, exactly.
Whether it's because you guys all are singing the same lyrics and I think I actually read an article about that, the psychological effects of it, that when people sing or are on the same note, such as singing in a choir, there's something that happens to them. Oh man, of course I'm blanking, but there's something that psychologically happens to them where they actually become connected or feel connected in a way. They're releasing some type of energy that's different than someone who sings by themselves.
Right. No, I believe that.
Which, while we're talking about that, I wanted to talk about your study. So you did a study for the National Institute of Health.
I was
regarding freestyle rapping.
Yeah, I was the pilot person in the program, like before the actual study started, they had me freestyle an MRI machine to even see if it was possible, and then me and a producer friend of mine, along with the scientists at the National Institute of Health, like helped design the study where they measured the brainwave patterns in terms of like which parts are active or inactive while somebody's freestyle rapping inside of an MRI machine.
And what are the results out yet or no?
Yeah, they've been out. I think the study came out at the end of 2012, and we actually did the study in 2010 into 2011, and then the results came out at the end of last year.
What are the results? Tell me.
I mean, the thing is, like,
I don't know.
They in the results they talk about which parts are active and which parts are inactive. And it was all in a bunch of jargon that I really didn't completely understand. But
you're like, I knew my brain was really active.
Right. But it was an interesting mixture of parts that had to do with language and listening at the same time, and then certain prefrontal functions that turn off so that the person doesn't self-edit as much. But you'd have to really look at it because
kind of stream of consciousness, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But it was like specifically looking at which parts of the brain are active or inactive in that stream of consciousness state. They call it the flow state because they also measured in another study improvisational musicians in an MRI. So yeah, you'd have to check out the results.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it was nature.com, I think is who published it. So, and it's still all there. I don't. It was funny because I had the psychology degree, and at one point I knew all the names of the lobes, and like I'm so blank on all of that now.
That part of your brain has turned off now.
Right, exactly. It's atrophied. Exactly.
Is there something I don't know if you've ever seen the Happy documentary, which I absolutely love.
I started it and didn't finish it.
Mike, you got to finish it. You will love it because they actually talk about something called flow.
Okay.
And they say that one of the times when people are the most happy is when they're in that flow. So maybe for you, it would be freestyle rapping. For anyone, it can be if they're in a sport and they're really good at that sport. If you're a comedian or an actress and you're in your zone.
It's that certain state of mind.
It's that state of mind. It's kind of like you said, you turn off the part that filters and you're just in the zone.
Exactly.
And that is one of the modes that we're in when we're the most happy.
Right.
When we're doing something that we love. Do you rap with the group or just your...
I have rapped with groups, and occasionally, there's other guys who I do collaborate with, and occasionally we'll go do some stuff together, but primarily solo.
So with others, when that flow is really off,
yeah,
when it's really, really on.
Yeah, and when and that's the thing now. Like the collective that I'm rapping with is this collective called the Hellfire Club, and we're all solo artists. But we did a tour last year where we all performed solo, and then at the end we came together and did a group set. And the group set, it was just tear the house down every night, and it was because I think we had all kind of gotten our solo thing out and kind of all reached our peak state, and then we combine at the end, and it's just that synergy. You know what I mean? It's just that synergy. It would just pulsate all through the room.
Do you think it's the type of personalities that you guys do flow together, or if there was some random artist that you had never met and you threw in there just because of the heightenedness of the energy?
Oh yeah, no, I would hate that. The entire time I'd be like, who is this dude? Why is this dude here? Why is this dude messing me up right now? For real, the freedom that I experienced during that group set every night, a big part of it had to do with the fact that I know these guys really well.
And you trust them.
Yeah, the trust is big. And we were traveling 6, 8, 10 hours a day in a van, and we already knew each other anyway, but it was we were in this ultimate state of congealed tour oneness. You know what I mean? And if you threw somebody in, oh my God, it would have been hell. It would have been hell to throw somebody in the middle of that.
Even if it was a Mother Teresa type person.
Why Mother Teresa up here? What's she doing?
Why is this?
Why is she looking like that? What is that? What does that mean? What's up, Mother Teresa? You not having a good time? It would have been all bad.
So the fourth thing that you mentioned in the book was DJing.
Uh-huh.
Do you DJ?
No, well, I play music Sometimes, like you know, I have a rap and comedy show that I do out here. I actually did it in New York recently as well. Like it's the Mike Eagle show, and it's kind of like a variety show, and I'll do like a DJ set, which means I play a playlist. You know what I mean? Like I always wanted to know how to DJ. I just never had the equipment really, and never had the timing. So that was like the one element that I couldn't really embrace because I couldn't afford the equipment when I was in high school, and just never really wrapped my head around.
Oh,
actually, yeah, you know, but, you know, did everything else. So 3 out of 4 wasn't bad, you know.
No, you came straight from Chicago out to LA, or did you make a side stop? A lot of people side stop in New York.
Well, no, I didn't. I've never lived in New York. I've only recently even been able to enjoy it. But no, I went to college. I went to Chicago to my college town, and then straight to LA.
Where is the college town?
Carbondale, Illinois. It's at the very southern tip of Illinois. It's like 5 hours south of Chicago.
Somewhere by The Simpsons.
Yeah. It was past Springfield, actually. It's about 2 hours past Springfield. I knew a lot of people from Springfield at my school.
Okay. So, but you were working out here as a psychologist in LA.
Well, I was working, when I moved out here, I was working with a nonprofit community technology program, and then I started working in schools. I worked with this nonprofit that did, then the next job I had was I worked in a facility for boys on probation. Like I was a counselor kind of personality there. And then I started working with this nonprofit that does tutoring programs in school and after school. And then I taught. And then I got laid off from teaching, and then I started doing music full time from there.
So in a way, being laid off was kind of a blessing because
it was really good.
Was it a tough blessing? Like,
it
were
was
you
horrible.
Okay.
It was horrible because like I taught special ed, and when you teach special ed, you have to do these really, like, I only had like 9 students in my class, but like.
So is this
like
kids
severe,
with like Asperger's or special learning ADHD or?
No, these are kids. I taught in in what's called a non-public school, so it's LAUSD. But for a child to be placed in the school, they had to have gotten kicked out of 2 regular schools already.
So they were very special.
Severe, like you know, like fetal alcohol syndrome,
Aww.
severely emotionally disturbed. Like it was, you know, some really tough cases. But we have to do like all special ed kids are on these IEP, these independent education programs. And what that means as a teacher is that you have to do these really long reports on all of the students. And I think this one week this summer, I had to do 2 IEPs on an IEP on 2 different students. So I had to do like these long reports and turn them in. And
what was the age group?
I had 3rd and 4th grade, but since it was special ed, I had kids as young like I had like 13, 14-year-olds in my class. So this week I do these IEPs, and that means staying a lot after work and kind of taking some work home and doing stuff. Meanwhile, you know, you're teaching all day or whatever. I turn them in at the end of the day, I think on a Thursday, and I'm driving home, and I get the call that I was getting laid off for the rest of the summer, and I was so upset. Like they made me do all of that extra work that week, and they knew they were going to lay me off the moment I turned that paperwork in. I was so upset about it, and also, you know, I was just kind of scared because I have a wife and I have a child, and you know, my income is important to our household, you know, but because my wife actually said like, don't worry about trying to get a job right now, like. You can go on unemployment for a little bit, and meanwhile, try the music thing, you know? And because it was already working, like, it was already yielding as much fruit as the attention that I could give to it, even while I was working. Like, I put out an album while I was working, and there were a lot of opportunities for, like, touring and stuff that I couldn't take advantage of because I was working. Exactly. So once that kind of opened up, like, I went on my first tour that fall after I got laid off, and my career kind of started from there.
So you have a really, really supportive wife.
I do. The most supportive wife, I would say. Because
a lot of wives would say, you get off your butt and get another job.
Honestly, like I was like, before I even hit the house, like from that phone call, I was already in my head like, okay, I'm gonna call this person. Like I'm already thinking like I need to, you know, like get another.
You were hustling. You're ready to hustle.
Already in my head, like trying trying to figure out this job, like a quick job situation, you know. But she was like, no, just chill out. You know what I mean? Just relax. And yeah, she kind of talked me down from going to get another job.
Do you think that your experience in the music industry helped you at all with dealing with those kids?
Well, I hadn't been quite in the industry yet then. Like I was.
Or your experience with music in general?
Not really. Like what helped me dealing with those kids is that I kind of had always worked with kids. You know what I mean? Like even when I was in college and I was like doing a little grad work, I would always have the type of assistantship where you mentor a bunch of freshmen. You know what I mean? Like I'd always kind of worked with kids, you know. And so those are the skills that kind of helped me with teaching more than anything, and dealing with kids was just having always, like, that had been almost the sum total of all of my work experience. I've been dealing with kids and youth.
Even though they were such difficult special ed kids?
Well, I mean, that just presented challenges that there was no preparation for.
Like what? Without, obviously incriminating any of these kids.
Some of them did criminal stuff. I mean, I had a kid literally get up out of his seat, run over to the room, and stab another kid in the shoulder with a pencil. Like stab, like the pencil was sticking out of his shoulder.
Oh my gosh!
You know what I mean?
Oh.
This is a third grader. You know, like,
was he the 13-year-old third grader?
Well, he was the one that got stabbed.
Okay,
it was the 13. I think the other one was like 11 or something like that. And then the kid who got stabbed, one day he came to school. He was gone. He was gone for like a week, which happened a lot because a lot of times, really, the commonality amongst most of these situations, really terrible households, really, really bad. Like no boundaries at home. Parents are really young. Parents are maybe not really in the house at all, kind of letting the kids run rampant like that. That was the commonality between just about all of them. That same kid, he was gone for a week and he came back with a tattoo.
A 14-year-old?
Yeah, 13. I think it was 13. He was 13 or 14 one.
But you couldn't legally get a tattoo until you're 18.
His mother let him get a tattoo, and it wasn't like he went to a shop and got one. Like somebody in the family gave it to him.
Oh my gosh!
It was like his aunt died or something, and they tattooed it on his arm. Like he was 13. You know, like, and that's he came to school another day after being gone for a while with a house arrest bracelet on.
So he was arrested and put on house arrest through a court system, or someone in his family took it off and put it on him? No. He had gotten caught stealing from Target, like again. You know what I mean? And his punishment. He went to court, and his punishment was how he could only go to school and go home. Oh my gosh! Well, as we say in the South, bless your heart. Because obviously those kids' parents are not. That really concerns me. A lot of the kids that I see, I just get, my heart hurts.
Where do you see kids a lot?
Just in general.
Okay.
I live next to Target.
Okay.
So
you see them all day?
All day, and just all over my neighborhood. My friends have kids. Mm-hmm. Some of my friends have kids and shouldn't have kids.
Yeah.
And
a lot of that.
And it's it's hard to watch. Especially, look, just because someone is a friend of mine, that's different criteria than being a mother or father.
Exactly.
And me and my husband don't have children yet. And, we go over to some of these people's houses and they're saying, oh, well, when are you guys going to have kids? When are you guys going to have kids? And we're still on the fence.
Right.
We're not against it. We're not for it. But when you see some of your friends just doing such bad parenting, and it's socially unacceptable to it's kind of like backseat driving.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you don't have kids, it's really tough.
It's really tough, and people will, I've heard, well, you don't know what it's like to have kids, so you can't judge me, and that's true. I don't know what it's like, but I also have seen really, really amazing parenting, right. And I've also seen not so amazing parenting. Yeah. I've seen some amazing parenting. I have seen absolutely amazing parenting with people. Usually it's people who have done a little bit of personal development, and worked on themselves, and
they have a different kind of awareness.
They have a different kind of awareness, and it doesn't mean Because I think a lot of times people think that you have to have come up in an amazing family or have had to have yourself a solid family background to be a great parent. And that's not necessarily true, because
I would agree with you. That's not true at all.
It's not, because a lot of people have a broken family and then they decide to take personal responsibility and say, you know what, growing up wasn't that fun. Let me figure some stuff out.
They showed me kind of what not to do.
Yeah.
So let me,
And so then they kind of fix and heal themselves, and then they say, well, I'm going to be a parent and I'm going to not do what my parents did. And so that you don't have to necessarily learn from amazing parents, and like you said, it's really difficult when you don't have kids because people are, think you're being judgmental. But
and also, the truth of the matter is raising children is just really hard. Like,
it is.
You just never, like, me and my wife, we have one child, and we try to be very prepared. But then there's just things that happen, and there's some of it there's just no manual for,
And I don't know if you know this. I talk about it all the time, but I don't know if I've brought it up to the listeners, if you guys know. But so the saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
For sure.
So it literally, we used to be in a village and everyone would help.
Exactly.
And so now, you and your wife are handling one child, when before, like, 30 people
would handle all the children.
Exactly. And you would all kind of watch out for each other's kids, and everyone would help, and it wasn't mommy and daddy. And I don't know how single parents do it. I honestly don't. And so we had that support system and that net, and a lot of people who have extended families have big extended families who are close by usually have a better time raising kids.
Exactly. No, my wife's mom helps out a lot. Mm-hmm. And then, and from when he was really young, so it helped out really amazingly, because
but that's the norm, or should be the norm.
Exactly.
And it's not in our society, and that's something that's broken, unfortunately, about our modern society, is that you used to have your auntie and your uncle and your tio and your grandma, and everyone was there, and so you had this, and it's supposed to help with separation too, because if a primary parent dies, you have this giant support of people. Right. Versus now, kids only have one or two, or maybe just one.
So it's 100% or 50% of your entire
world crashes if mommy and daddy get divorced or something happens. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important, like you have your mother-in-law, but to have some type of alternative support system, because it just seems like kids are just having a little bit more difficulty than back in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
All these ADHDs and all syndromes and everything. It's like we didn't have this before.
That's right.
So a little more love and a little less TV, I think.
Yeah, I mean, TV and less TV, and definitely more attention and more listening to.
How old is your son or daughter?
He's 5.
He's 5.
He's 5. And what else is really important, and it goes back to what I was saying about the special ed kids and what was going on in their households, what I find to be more important than anything is boundaries.
There was no boundaries at all
in those situations. And so I just found it to be so important in raising our child that there's boundaries, there's structure, that there's just an understanding of you don't get a tattoo. Well, not just that. Yeah, and then there's some things you don't say, and ways that you say things, and consequences. Things have to have consequences, and I don't mean any kind of physical punishment or anything like that, but there has to be some consequences. There has to be some accountability. It's not just don't do this. It's okay, if you do this, then you have to lose something, or you know what I mean. It has to be some understanding that it's just that's the way that you prepare a child for the world, is just understanding that your actions have consequences.
So do you think with a lot of these kids, the parents themselves just had no concept personally in their own lives?
Yeah. Or you're right. I think what happens in a lot of those situations is that those parents they think that their own lives are more important. They're wrapped up in their own personal drama too much, and they're not giving enough attention or reverence or respect to the environment that the kid is growing up in. They don't. It's the terrible way to say it is that they don't care enough, about the youth, about the child. They're partying, or they're dating, or they're, you know what I mean? They're doing, they're allowing themselves to be distracted by their own personal drama, and letting their children just run rampant, basically.
So, do you think I know you are dealing with a very special sect of kids, but do you think that more often than not, this is becoming the norm?
I don't know if it's becoming the norm, because when I taught, when I worked in regular schools, I didn't necessarily see that becoming a trend. I think I don't think it was a problem that was growing necessarily. But then again, so much of that has to do with the environment too. Like, depending on what neighborhood the school's in, like that reflects the trends of what's happening. You know what I mean? Like,
how many different schools had you worked in?
Oh man, I worked for this company that did this nonprofit that did the in school and after school tutoring and mentoring, and I worked with them for 2 years. And man, I had worked at one school primarily, but as I was needed other places, I'd be moved around, or like say my school was out of session, they would put me in a different school for a while. So 6 or 7 schools maybe. So
did you see the issues that I hear a lot of issues with LAUSD, because a lot of my comedian friends are substitute teachers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's funny.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I bet it is.
In fact, most of the substitute teachers, I think most of the comedians I know are substitute. A lot of comedians I know are substitute teachers.
A lot of rappers I know are substitute
really?
teachers. Yeah.
That's funny, because I actually when I was in high school, one of our substitute teachers was a rapper.
There you go.
And sometimes kids would see him out, because in New Orleans, I think 3 years before I was in high school, it was the only city in the country where the drinking age was still 18. And so they finally changed it to 21. But if you've ever been to New Orleans, it's kind of like Las Vegas. Like no one cares.
You walk Bourbon Street, you're just walking around drinking.
No one cares. And so, kids would go out to bars in high school and stuff. And sometimes we would see Mr. Hewitt out at rap shows and other things, or he'd be pushing his album.
That's funny.
But yeah, he was pretty good actually. But
what did he go by? What was his rap name?
I think he went by Mr. Hewitt.
That's not smart, Mr. Hewitt. That is a terrible move.
I think that he had a rap group. I have to Google it.
That would be like Clark Kent making his superhero name also Clark Kent. You know what I mean? Like, that is really not smart at all.
I think his rap name was like, he had some group, and I'm totally misquoting, but so it's like, how like Huey Lewis in the News?
Yeah.
So I think his was like Mr. Hewitt and the Somethings.
Really? Like,
yes.
Like he had pips? Like it's Gladys Knight?
It's the kind of.
Wow.
He was kind of like the quirky sub that everyone loved and everyone wanted as a sub.
I bet. Rappers make the most fun teachers. I won't say the best, but certainly the most fun.
But I might have to Google this. I don't know if he's online. He may have retired. He was much older. He was an older rapper.
Rappers never retire. Never happens. Even when they say they retire, and it's just to hype the next album. You know what I mean? Never go away.
I don't know. There's some New Orleans rappers that I think have retired. I know a couple of New Orleans rappers that have retired into being ministers and then being musicians in the religious world, in the church. And then I
guess that's the kind of retirement. It's kind of like a sideways movement.
And then I know rappers from the New Orleans scene that have just had so much baby mama drama that they kind of fell off.
Right. They had to go hide.
And some pretty big rappers, because I was growing up in New Orleans in the Cash Money days.
Oh, wow.
Where it was just craziness.
The block is hot, huh?
Yeah, it was craziness. So... but I do know a couple rappers that just the baby mama drama outweighed
Yikes.
the album sales.
Yeah. That can happen. That can happen pretty easily. People don't buy CDs like they used to. You can't get that many women pregnant. It doesn't add up. It's not a balance. You'd be in a poorhouse.
Yeah, so that's something. I mean, baby mama drama is always to be watched. Guys and gals out there. I know even in the comedy world, Cat Williams was having baby mama drama and was being bankrupted by multiple.
Careful, man. I guess we never learn, man. It's really interesting.
Notice I didn't say ex-wife.
No, right. Yeah.
Hose.
Got to use protection, cat. Dang.
So you're saying if you're a rapper and a substitute teacher, you use a different rap?
Please use a different name, Mr. Hewitt. Please. You're blowing your cover every night. I remember the first time, oh my goodness, one of the students...
Yeah, did they give you a hard time finding out that you're a rapper?
Well, most of the time they didn't find out because they just weren't savvy like that.
Even with Google?
Right. Well, I mean, this is the thing. If nobody ever told you I was a rapper, you had no reason to Google me. Now, but one of these students, and not in the special ed schools, when I worked at this other elementary school, and one of his older sisters
was a fan or saw you.
I don't know.
Something.
It couldn't have been a fan, but for some reason she had Googled me. And the kid came to school the next day like, oh, Mr. Eagle. Oh, Mr. Eagle. I saw you rapping on a computer. No, that wasn't me.
See, that's my worst fear, because I'm doing okay now, but there have been times as an artist where I needed money
you
bad.
gotta go get a job sometimes.
And a lot of my friends who subbed were like, well, why don't you sub? And I also used to model in my early 20s, and I have some risque pictures online.
Careful there.
So I was like, that was like my worst fear, especially, if you're with middle school boys and this and that. So I was like, I don't know if I should.
No, if I had any, I'd have been very scared.
I'm like, no, I don't know if it's a good idea.
Especially nowadays, yeah. Cool. That's the thing, I guess, to me, if you're a little boy and you think your teacher's hot, then you might Google her. You know what I mean? If you find out her first name, you might Google her. But I really didn't have reason. Students didn't really have a reason to just randomly Google me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like wouldn't that be kind of a weird thing to do? Just randomly Google somebody?
I don't know. A lot of people Google people these days.
I guess so.
But so actually, I totally had a freestyle moment, stream of consciousness, because I got off track. So since I have a lot of friends who are comedians and also substitute teachers, they've kind of told me about the craziness of LAUSD and the public school system, and I wanted to know if you felt that all the negative stuff that I've heard is true, or if it's just people are...
What kind of stuff did they say?
I've heard it's just out of control. It needs to be completely reformed. I've heard from some people, from others.
Well, honestly, I never had to really deal with LAUSD directly very much. Mm-hmm. Like when I worked in schools and the nonprofit, I was paid, all of my administration came through the nonprofit. When I worked at that special ed school, it kind of had its own...
It was separate.
Like it was under the umbrella of LAUSD, but it wasn't, things didn't work directly through them. So I never really had to deal with them much. I have heard of people's pay being messed up a lot. That I heard a lot. But it never affected me. And they do get like a little weird about how they do with the standards and changing them and the testing and stuff like that. But that's a lot of stuff that's not just LAUSD. I mean, that's most school districts, especially in the post No Child Left Behind era. Like everything got turned upside down.
Yeah, I don't even know what it's like now, because it was so different. I mean, we had standardized testing, but it wasn't like the way I'm hearing it now. And I have a girlfriend who's a teacher, and she's all about helping kids, and she says that the way they're forcing her to teach standardized testing, she just feels like it's memorization.
It is, absolutely.
And that the kids aren't really learning, and it's really difficult for her to go to work and with her heart in it to help the kids, and then just teaching them regurgitation.
Oh yeah, exactly, because they're teaching to the tests. That's what's happening, and that's what's been happening since No Child Left Behind. I mean, I know they're reforming a lot of that stuff now, but that's the way things have been for the last little while now. So
there's just going to be, like in 10 or 15 years, this 3 or 4 or 5 year block of kids that just can't function in
don't
society.
Know nothing. Seriously.
There's stuff like that now. I mean, I've been really surprised. Apparently, I got a good education because as an adult, I've talked to certain people about things and they're just clueless and like, well, we didn't learn that in school.
Right.
And I'm like, that's pretty basic stuff.
Yeah, no.
I know adults that didn't know anything about the Vietnam War, didn't know anything, because I'm Vietnamese, didn't know anything about just some pretty basic. I mean, I understand that the system is not perfect, but some pretty basic main.
I mean, just education differs so wildly from district to district, from city to city, town to town. It is you get vastly different experiences. like, you know, even from school to school within district. Yeah, like in one of the schools I worked at, it was vastly different from classroom to classroom. Just the efficacy of the teacher, and if you were a parent, it was hard because it was kind of just luck of the draw. You end up with,
like a lotto.
Yeah, you'd end up with the best teacher, or you end up with the worst teacher, and there's like nothing you can do about it. You know?
Is that why they're trying to get rid of the whole tenure system?
I didn't know they were trying to get rid of it, but I bet that does have something to do with it, because there were definitely some problem teachers who you could tell were just leaning on tenure, you know.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of it because I guess they're saying teachers should be based on merit and how well they teach the students, and obviously not tenure, or teachers that are protected by tenure.
I mean, but you know that protection is important too, though, because without that, then
like if you paid your dues for years and years and years.
Well, I mean, what I would think too is if they got rid of tenure, then there's nothing to stop a school, like, because teachers are supposed to kind of get raises, I guess.
Like every few years, yeah.
Right. So why would they keep a teacher long if there wasn't tenure? They would just get a new one because it would cost less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that seems like it's kind of important too. You know.
I think there's a good mix, but I don't know what the answer is.
I don't either.
How many albums have you released?
This is my 4th LP, and I've released a bunch of EPs too.
Okay, so what is the difference? Tell me. I'm not saying I am admitting my ignorance.
Well, okay. Do you remember? Okay, so there's SP, EP. And
I didn't even know about SP
because SPs kind of don't exist anymore.
Okay, so you're like laying down knowledge hardcore right
there
here.
You go. So SP is like single player. So like, if you, like a 45 or something had like one song on,
like a cassette.
Yeah, like, or a single, like it'd have one song.
A single, okay.
That's a single player, and then it had extended players, which is like 2-3 songs on one side, 2-3 songs on the other side. So an EP is usually just like 4 or 5 songs, extended play, and then an LP is a long player, and that usually just means 40 minutes and up. So like a whole album is a long player, because before, like, I think the 50s. So is
okay, before you finish, so is EP kind of like a demo, kind of?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's straight up length.
Okay.
So single player 1, EP usually 4 or 5 songs, LP usually 10 to 13 songs, but it really is length of time more than anything. Because you can have a LP that's 3 songs if all of the songs are 12 minutes each. You know what I mean? Like,
okay. So back to the 50s.
But I was saying, before the 50s, music wasn't really sold in album form. It was only really sold by singles. So like after, like, I think when rock and roll came, is when they started like, oh, well, we'll take all of the singles that we put out and put them together so that everybody could buy them all at once. And then so it went from these single players to ultimately this long player, which is the LP, which is the album. This is my 4th full-length album.
Okay.
It's probably, I could have just said that.
No, you taught us something. This is good. I did not learn that in school.
It's very
useless. It was not on my standardized
It wasn't on mine either. And it's useless information unless you worked in the industry in 1964. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter at all.
We had records. We had a record player. My mom had a record player, and we had all the vinyls. We would go to garage sales and buy them and listen to them on the record player. And then I had a little tiny record player that played singles.
Yeah.
And they still sold those in the 80s and 90s.
They still sold the little
ones.
The little records? How big were they?
We had big ones, and then we had little ones.
They still sell big ones and little ones. They still sell 12 inches, and the little ones are called 45.
Record store, right? Like a specialty.
Well, pretty much. Or Amoeba. They got all the records in the world. You know what I mean?
Some of our listeners don't have an Amoeba.
Well, where do they live? Well, you can order from Amoeba. You can just go online. Okay? They're listening to this, then they have a computer.
And is all of your sound pretty much similar to dark comedy, or is it vary from album to album? Because I know, I've listened to artists evolve over time, and some of the albums can sound pretty different.
They don't sound too different. I was telling somebody earlier, I could have named any one of my albums dark comedy, honestly, because like that's more. Honestly, that has more to say just about how I approach music in general than this particular project. But I mean, I think I'm kind of like, my sound is a lot more developed now. But if you listen to my earlier work, it's a lot of the same sounds. Like it's a hip hop that's they call it hyperliterate, which just means I use a lot of words, I guess. And then
it means I'm smart.
But no, that's what I'm saying. Because you can be dumb and still like use a bunch of words. But so yeah, it's that, and it's over these.
It means I have a psychology degree, Rosie.
It does. It means I barely graduated, and I'm making the best of it. But it's all over these. A lot of my production is very like a synthesizer based, like.
And do you do all that? You produce all that? No,
I produce very little of my own.
You
music.
just rap.
I write the words and I rap the words and I sing the words and I'll make a beat here and there. But
so how do you know what beat to rap to? Do you produce the beat with a producer?
Well, no,
or do you just freestyle and then find the beat later?
Well, no. I tend to. I have a lot of producers that I work with, and they just constantly make stuff. They're just at home making stuff, and sometimes they'll make stuff for me. Sometimes they just make stuff just to make stuff, and I'm always listening to like, oh, okay, I like that. I want to use that. You know what I mean? Oh, I like this. I want to use it. And occasionally I'll bring somebody a piece of music and be like, I want to make something that sounds like this, but that's pretty rare too. Most of them are just making stuff, and I'm like, that speaks to me. Let me do a song over that.
So just for my own, I'm sure the listeners are not interested in this at all, but this is just for my own personal knowledge on the business side. If you used a producer's beat, how does that work? Do you say, hey, my album is $20 and you get $5? Or do you say, hey, here's, a flat rate for your beat? Or is it just like, here's a gift, Mike, I'm giving you this beat?
Well, it depends. Most of the time I work with producers for free, but it's with the caveat that, let's say a song gets licensed to use on an iTunes commercial or something. Not that that's ever happened, but that's potentially a way that a lot of money could come in. And then, so that money gets split.
Okay.
So if
that is not totally crazy.
No, it's not. I mean,
know people that have had random beats licensed.
I've been in the position to have songs licensed. It just hasn't really ever happened yet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, so that's how things are set up typically. Like, and a lot of times they give me music for free, and if they're working on something and they want a verse for me, then I give that to them for free. You know what I mean? Like, we all kind of work together, and then if something happens where a bunch of money comes in, and we all split it fairly based on who did what.
Okay. That was just for my personal knowledge.
But it does vary from artist to artist, though. Some artists pay every producer one flat fee.
That's Mitzi, everyone. She's the co-host. If you guys check out outoftheboxpodcast.com, she's actually featured as a co-host.
Lovely.
She is barking in her input right now, and she agrees with you, Mike.
I know. She does. She's like, wait a minute, you ain't pay me. But some people pay a producer up front a flat fee, and then so even if things get licensed later, they just keep all the money because they already paid the producer for it. But it varies from artist to artist how they figure it out.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap up, but I just want to ask you a couple more things before we wrap up.
Okay.
If you are an independent artist,
mm-hmm.
say you're living, in Indiana or Middle America somewhere, and you want to get started, I know the internet is a great resource. What would you suggest their first step be?
Well, okay, the first thing I would say is just complete some music. Complete something. Complete anything that you have that you can show people.
Like a demo or just something, anything.
I mean, yeah, it's so important. Like, I know a lot of very talented rappers, super talented rappers, and the only thing that holds them back is that they don't finish anything. Like, they're always working on an album that never comes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be helpful. You need something to sell.
Something to sell and just something to show people that, like, you can make a statement, you can execute. Like, that's so important. Like, that, to me, I've noticed that really separates the pack. Like, who actually has a statement to make? You know what I mean? Secondly, I would say I would really, and this is going to sound messed up, but people ask me this when I'm on tour. I say, move, pick up and leave here, wherever you are, like, because this business,
you have to be in certain cities.
You have to. You really do.
So what are the main cities? LA, New York.
LA, New York. Also, depending on what kind of style of music you're doing, you could be in New Orleans, you could be in Atlanta, you could be in Seattle, you could be in Portland, you could be in Minneapolis. Minneapolis is huge with independent rap. It's just you kind of have to know what you want to do. But definitely LA, New York. I mean, it's very important to have have a really strong network and know people and to be close to opportunities. Like just living in LA affords you so many opportunities
that you wouldn't get.
Right. Like high platform stuff, high income stuff that you kind of have to keep you going. You know, if you're out in Utah somewhere, like, I mean, you can go to Salt Lake City, but if you're out of there, like, you know, you gotta get close to some people that are where it's happening. You have to get close to where the business is, you know?
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. How can people find you online? How can they find your album and support you?
Well, the album's called Dark Comedy. It's on iTunes. I am at mikeeagle.net, MikeEAGLE.net, and then there's portals there to the Twitter, the Facebook, the YouTube, the Tumblr, all that stuff, which I'm on constantly.
Well, thank you for being on Out of the Box. Guys, this is Out of the Box with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmetees.com. Hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug. Hugmetees.com. Also, we are now on SoundCloud. Check us out on SoundCloud. Click on the follow button. We just switched over and we need some more followers. And of course, iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Leave a comment and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You guys have been listening to Out of the Box podcast with Rosie Tran.